Hi everyone, this is the plagiarism video that you need to watch before submitting your rough draft. Um, uh, uh, you want to make sure, again, as I said in the comments, in the instructions, that you'll need to upload your rough draft, and if your rough draft has more than 40%, 40% or more of its material comes from another source, I won't grade it, right? I won't mark that. That's because that means a big chunk of your assignment you didn't write. It came from somewhere else. And one of the things that Turnitin does is it checks for that source. I posted another short video that shows how to find my comments and how to find how much of the source came from other materials. But we're kind of reviewing some of that here, and then I'm going to go beyond that a little bit. So if you'll see over here in the right-hand side, this is a paper that was uploaded to Blackboard about a poem that we're not talking about. If you'll see over here this number, this is the amount of the paper, the match overview, that came from another source. And so you just click on this button that says match similarity layer that shows the highlighted parts of what came from other sources. If I click this button, it would hide, you wouldn't be able to see these, and so you can hide them if you want, if you find them distracting. But if I click them now, you'd end up being able to see the person's name and things like that, and I'm not going to, I don't want to do that. So we've got the match overview. 27% of this paper came from another source, which is fine. It's under 40%, and that's perfectly fine. And then what I can do, and again, what you can do as well after you upload your paper, you can see which parts came from other sources. And so you can see highlighted at number 1, it has a quote from the poem, a rather long quote, probably too much. But this is all, you can see there's a quotation mark there, and this is all from the poem. And that's okay, right? Because you need to be using quotes. And the quotes will come up as coming from other sources because other students are writing about this poem, not just in my class, but in other classes throughout the country. So it's fine to have a number below 40%, and it's fine if the highlighted part is going to be these quotes, right? And so number 1, it says this came to lit intro on Tumblr. It just found some place where this line shows up. It probably shows up in a lot of different places, but that was one of them. So it tells me where it shows up. And then down here, Mrs. Walker brought a persimmon to class and cut it up. Everyone's going to taste a Chinese apple. No, I wasn't ripe or sweet. I didn't eat it, but watched the others' faces. Again, it's bringing this in, but that's going to be a quote from the text as well. It's submitted to a course in California. Down here, it has this line, a persimmon to class and tell everyone that is a Chinese apple. And that's not a quote, but notice that it kind of looks very similar to a persimmon to class so everyone can taste a Chinese apple, what we have in 2, right? And so it's saying that's kind of the same thing, right? And so it's flagging that, even though it's basically kind of just repeating what we had from an actual quote. And that's okay as well. I might tell this person that this is going to be kind of redundant, that if you just have that quote there, why are you telling us some more about the exact same quote there? But it's not plagiarism. That's not a problem with that. So again, as long as your quotes are coming up as things that are as long as it's just quotes that are coming up, things that are being tagged as existing in other places are only actual quotations from the poem, that's perfectly fine. Again, I still want that to be under 40% because sometimes I've had students who will turn in an essay that's 60% quote. Well, you can't have an essay at 60% quote because that means basically what you're doing is just quoting me back the entire poem and you're just writing just a little bit. So I want that turned around. I want 40 to be the maximum, well, 39 to be the maximum. Even that is a little high, and I'll probably, if it's up and around 39, I'll probably suggest some places where you can trim that down. But that is going to be the maximum that I'll even look at. So I want to make sure that you are in fact doing 60% of the work. So that's how Turnitin works like that. I do want to kind of talk just briefly then about why plagiarism matters. The reason that we care so much about it, on some level, well, there's two reasons. One reason is we want you to be able to create all your own work. So if you go out and just grab something from Wikipedia or GradeSaver or any of those kinds of websites, then you aren't doing the actual work. And it's not just a matter of the writing work that we want you to do. We want you to do the intellectual work of really thinking about what these poems mean. Notice that I spend a lot of time not writing, when I give examples, I don't give examples about the poems that we're talking about because I don't want to give you ideas. Even here, I put in here this poem that we're not talking about this semester because I didn't want you to see something that's like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to say about the poem. I want you to be coming up with those ideas yourselves. I know that sometimes the poems might be confusing, and I know that you've got this, access to all this information at your fingertips, and you can go look up and say, what does this poem actually mean? But I want you to really want you to be going through the intellectual exercise of kind of working on this on your own. And so that's one reason why we don't want plagiarism, because we want to see that you've actually really thought about this on your own, because that's part of the course. That's part of what you're being graded on. The other reason has to do with the fact that you're taking somebody else's words or ideas, and if they come up with those words or ideas, they own them. And the person who comes up with words or ideas, that's actually part of their reputation. It's like saying, look, I did this thing. I came up with this great idea. I wrote this important essay or this important book. And they can turn that into money, right? They can say, look, I can go get a job somewhere because look at what I've done. And if you're taking that, it's kind of like you're saying, oh, see, I should be able to get a job somewhere because look at what I've done. But you didn't do that work, right? That's not what you came up with. And so it's really important to think about the fact that writers own both their words and their ideas. They're the ones that come up with the ideas, they own them, and then when they put them down and write them in a particular order, they're going to own those as well. And you can't be taking that, because if you take credit for that, you are saying, look what I can do, when in reality you can't actually do that. And it kind of undermines what that other person did, right, if you take that away from them. So that becomes rather important. Again, we just make sure that you are doing the actual work here. And the way in which I'm building you up through these, by having you do the brainstorming session, brainstorming writing assignment, but, you have to write on the discussion board first about the poems with your classmates. You have to do the brainstorming. You have to do an outline, and then you have to do a rough draft. I'm building you up through this so you can see in stages how to be thinking about this. I'm not just throwing you into just suddenly writing about something you don't understand anything about. We're slowly working up through that. And so you should be figuring out what's going on with the poem through that process. However, of course, if you're having any questions about what, any kind of meaning in the poem, you're all confused, I'm completely available for phone conferences. And so that kind of, working through these stages and talking to me keeps you from getting into trouble about plagiarism, because where we usually get into trouble with plagiarism is when we panic and feel like, wait, I don't know what this poem is about. I need some help. Let me just go Google it and see what I come up with. But if we work through those stages and then use me as a resource, then you won't run into those kind of problems. So keep all that in mind for the rough draft as we're moving through, and for the final draft as well. And again, as always, if you have any questions, make sure to email me.